Jen.
Fantastic, thanks. Can everyone see my screen? Yes. So I'm Jen. I'm a product manager here at NGP Van, and just stepping in for Kate Sullivan, our product director, to go over some of our roadmap updates. So, just again, feel free to jump in with any questions, but I'll try to stop sort of between each feature to leave room for questions. So to start, wanted to kind of do a reminder on some of the features we've released over the last couple of months. First up is distributed canvassing 2.0. So for those of you who don't remember, a quick reminder, distributed canvassing is our tool where essentially Minivan will cut your turf for you. We did a pilot program of distributed canvassing starting in, September, October of last year. And based on some feedback from the pilot program, we made some changes and released those about mid-July this year. So distributed canvassing, essentially you select a universe, generate a list number, and then when your canvassers type that list number into Minivan, it cuts their turf for them using their current location. And some of the biggest points of feedback that we received from the pilot program was that while distributed canvassing was great, and we had some great defaults, folks were really looking to be able to be a little bit more flexible with some of the variables for creating distributed canvas. So that's why we rolled out the new workflow, which allows you to change sort of the distance between houses or between your canvasser and houses. So if you're running a rural program, you can widen up that distance. If you're running a urban program, you can tighten up that radius, as well as allowing folks to change the expiration date. So if you need folks to be working on a list over a couple of days, you can make those changes. The other sort of piece of feedback we received on distributed canvassing was that there wasn't much insight into what had been checked out and what was left in the universe. So the new list page now gives you just some basic stats like total doors, the doors checked out, and the doors remaining in the universe. There's also a report where you can see, distributed canvassing list as they're checked out, so you can see who has what in addition to seeing to them on the commit page. So again, just kind of a reminder how distributed canvassing works on Minivan. You do have to have location services enabled. You enter that printed list number that you've generated, and then you're going to get the closest doors based on your canvasser's current location within sort of those radiuses that have been set. Just a note about, I guess administering this. This is no longer in beta. We've kind of rolled it out everywhere. And I believe most state admins should have the security function distributed canvassing that they can and should feel free to enable for folks. We kind of, with these releases, we kind of consider this out of beta, and folks should feel free to use it. Any question? I'll kind of stop here for questions on distributed canvassing before moving on to the next Minivan update.
Hey, this is Nick Marshall. I have a question. I'm in Georgia. We've been playing around with this. One of the issues we had with distributed canvassing is when we had multiple folks sign in and sign into the list from the same location, it would pull like the nearest 40 doors for the first person, and then it would do an ever expanding radius from there. And so by the time you were on the fourth person, it was like a weird ring where it wasn't walkable. Do you have any I think what we came up with is having people drive out to a location and then sign in from a list, but do you have any recommendations for that?
So it kind of depends on how you're running your program. You're right. If you're all downloading the list from the same location, you're going to get doors that are kind of further and further and further away. I like to think of it as kind of like, well, it's, if you have pre-cut turf, your pre-cut packets are also going to be, some are going to be really close to the staging location. and some are going to be really far away from your current location. That said, if sending people out to different locations works better for you, then I would say go for it. My one sort of hesitation and caution with that is one of the pieces of feedback that we got from our pilot program was that minivan is always going to give you the closest doors to your current location. You don't want to kind of guess where doors are and send people over there and then have them be frustrated that actually their doors are, another 10-minute drive across town. That's my one caution with, sending people out to download lists from different locations. But if it's been working for your program, then great. The nice thing about distributed canvassing is it's really flexible. And I think folks are using it in lots of different ways that works best for the program they're running, kind of like in what works best for the volunteers.
Okay, but just to clarify, I wasn't saying that the other doors were far away from the starting location. I'm saying that they're not close to each other because they form a ring around your starting location.
Totally. We are constantly kind of tweaking that algorithm. So I'm just going to make a note. The doors are supposed to be close to you and close to each other. If it gave you a ring without I'm trying to troubleshoot this on the phone. But if it gave you a ring, my guess is that actually your canvasser radius might be a little bit too big, and you might want to consider shrinking that because it might kind of make the initial universe of what the stored procedure is pulling from a little bit smaller, and I think you might end up with better turfs that way.
Okay.
That said, always happy to look at specific examples of when the turf is not cut in ways that you're happy with. So if you could send in a support ticket kind of with the canvasser, the date, and the list number, I would be interested in pulling that as an example for the data team to take a look at to see, kind of if there's a way to make it be better.
Yeah, for sure. I've got screenshots, so I can share those too.
Yeah, awesome. And then, because that would be really helpful.
Okay.
Cool. Any other questions, comments on distributed canvassing? The next up in sort of our recently released, we are running another Minivan pilot. This is on embedded videos in Minivan. This allows you basically to sort of store that video offline and play it at the door, so that if you have, a short candidate piece or issue piece that you want to be able to show on the doors, you can have that video in Minivan. This is a pilot program where, right now we haven't really expanded it. There are some, limitations on what kind of videos we can host. Notably, the videos cannot be hosted at any sort of third party like YouTube. They have to be, natively hosted by your organization. But what it does allow you to do is drop in that URL in a description, and then it sends that video down to Minivan. If Minivan is connected to the internet, it will download that video so that your canvassers can then play it. It also, if you, the URL essentially works as a backup so that if the download doesn't work or your canvassers dismiss the message to download the video, you can always play that video, using a data connection. So that is, currently a pilot program. If you think that would be something that would work for one of your doors programs, let us know and we can talk to you about some of the limitations and potentially turning it on for your committees. Any questions on videos on Minivan? Cool. So next up, a couple of quick updates on online actions. Notably, we now allow you to add those self-reported fields to your online actions forms. So folks can, I think we rolled this out within Van a couple years ago. We now allow you to add those fields to any of your online actions forms. And we've also added survey questions to online actions forms. I have to say, if folks have questions, I'm happy to field them. I'm a little bit less familiar with this one, but did want to remind folks that these were updates that have gone out to online actions in the last couple of months. Next up, volunteer management. I think when Katie and Amanda talked about this last time, sort of our overarching goals with the volunteer management project was really, Van can be kind of intimidating, and there's a lot to do, and we are trying to both direct those workflows as well as create a couple things that should make volunteer management, volunteer recruitment a little bit easier. The first step is that we're now doing shift time on events. So if you need to calculate the number of hours that your volunteers are actually volunteering, we do that for you both on the event and then also on this event participant report. So if you need to know how many hours people were volunteering for this angry mob, those calculations are now there on both, again, the event and then the event report. The other thing that I think is particularly cool is the ability to create supporter groups. This is also controlled by a new security function that you can roll out to folks. But this allows you to group supporters and then both shift them in bulk and otherwise take actions on them. So if I want to create a new group of Somerville volunteers, everyone in our Somerville office is going to go volunteer for some cause. I can quickly search for contacts to add to this group. And I can see, some quick information about them and about sort of the group itself, how many events, when they're added, when they were last active. And then that information will also show up on the person along with the event that they are scheduled for. This is both integrated into the event scheduler, and it is also integrated into online actions forms. So those event forms that are awesome that we rolled out earlier in the summer, you can also create a form for your supporter group and send it out to that group of folks so that it kind of tags them with that supporter group for you. I think this is going to be really, really helpful for volunteer management. I know that folks will have sort of like their group of college volunteers or their group of volunteers from a certain, a certain club. I think this is really going to help keep track of those groups and allow people to take actions on them pretty quickly without having to actually remember which volunteers are part of which sort of volunteer group. I believe we've also rolled out some options here around bulk upload and API for supporter groups. And then sort of like one of the the last part in this section is I think, as everyone knows, we did a pretty big update to landing pages. So this is again just trying to get back to that directed workflows point from the top. So this is what the dashboard used to look like. And this is what it looks like now in my campaign and then in my voters. Really trying to surface activities that are that organizers do on a day-to-day, so they don't have to go hunting through the sidebar menu, and sort of surface their most recent tasks, and their phone banks. And I think what I am happy to say is I think the number one question that we get on these landing pages is, hey, sort of these pre-canned searches that you guys rolled out, these hot leads, these active volunteers, that's great. Can I, change the underlying query that is, generating these hot leads? That would be great. So I am happy to say that this week we are rolling out the ability to change those queries for my campaign on the dashboard. That is coming out this week. And then the following week, folks will be able to make changes to those widgets and those searches on the My Campaign side of the dashboard. That is also controlled by a separate security function. So you'll be able to hand that out to whoever needs to be able to control those queries of the landing pages. Just gonna kind of pause for questions on the supporter groups and landing pages section.
And all of you can unmute yourselves if you have questions.
Well, while folks think, I'm happy to go on to the rest of our, upcoming releases. So I'm very excited about this landing page release. And again, as a reminder, the My Campaign release is going to be this week, and the My Voters release will be next week for making those changes on the landing pages. We do have a couple of additional minivan beta programs that we're going to be releasing later this month. The first is what we're calling Find My Next Door beta. For folks who aren't as familiar with minivan, Find My Next Door is our current version of routing, where we surface the 3 closest doors as the crows flies. That's been out for a couple years, and we've received a lot of good feedback on it. And one of the things that it was most constant was that only showing the 3 closest doors was kind of confusing to folks. So we are rolling out a beta version of Find My Next Door where we show you all of the houses on your list in in a distance order. That distance order is still going to be as the crows flies. And also importantly, if you know minivan, you've probably heard this complaint. Currently on Find My Next Door, when you canvas a disappears from that view, and we show you the next uncanvassed house. That was, I think a lot of folks found that confusing, and they weren't able to navigate back to find those houses. So this list is always going to be static. So once you canvas a house, it's gonna stay in this view, and you can just go down the list to the next closest. So that is a beta program that folks can opt into. I believe that will be released. We're looking to release that the 24th of August. And we'll send out information about how to opt into that beta version of Find My Next Door. The next beta program that we're running out for minivan is actual route optimization. So instead of just showing the houses in an ordered distance of as the crows flies, we will be actually partnering with a routing company to provide actual routing, and either, depending on if you are walking or driving, actual directions from house to house. Just ordering the doors as the crows flies, it should be ordered in a more logical way to actually get through that walk route. You to both enter your start and end point to optimize your route. So you could put in, if you want to start and end from your staging location, great. But if you need to end somewhere else, it allows you to do that as well. That will be supported in this beta version for up to 100 map points, which I think will be good for most all Canvas packets. And that will be rolling out towards the end of this month, first week of September, last week of August. And again, we'll have more information if you're interested in opting into this beta program about how to do that when we release the app updates. Any question on either of these sort of, I guess, beta updates?
Hey, Jen, it's Julia. Is there anything about either of those features that, as admins, the folks on this call may want to consider or will need to know about?
That is a good question. I think the actual sort of configuring, it will be done by Van staff. So I think just being aware of it and knowing that if folks are interested in being in the beta program, to send in a support ticket to get information on how to opt in. I think that is like the main takeaway point there.
Cool, thanks, Jen.
Awesome. So that is what I have in the sort of the upcoming releases. But I did want to note we are sort of in the information planning stages of a couple of additional projects. The first is supporter-generated events on online actions. So allowing your supporters to create their own events and have that work with our online actions and then the event scheduling tools. That one is just kicking off now. And then post-election, we will be doing some updates to our story collection and management tools, as well as a Minivan UI update. So as always, if folks are interested in giving feedback or being a part of any sort of like the user interview, user testing for these upcoming features, if you reach out to Julia, we'd be happy to loop you into that process. And that is what I had for updates. Any questions?
So,
Angela, anything question-wise from the national team that you wanted to discuss?
yeah, so all of these are available in My Campaign, correct? Do we expect any to be available in My Voters anytime soon?
Sorry, which features?
Any of the features covered today.
Sure. So just as I guess, all of the Minivan features are available in both My Campaign and My Voters. Kind of working backwards. Just as an overall reminder, we did roll out the ability to schedule for events from the voter file in the spring. So while supporter groups isn't, going to be available in My Campaign, and a lot of the actual event creation work is not going to be available in My Campaign, you do have the ability to, use the event scheduler from Virtual Phone Bank and Open Virtual Phone Bank from My Voters. And there's a couple other places where you can actually schedule people for events from the voter file. The other thing, again, the landing page is in both My Voters and My Campaign, and the ability to set these queries yourselves, that will also be available in My Voters.
Perfect, thank you. And can we expect any further changes made to Van between now and the election, or right now are we in a standstill moment?
So our actual code freeze, and I don't remember the time, the actual date off the top of my head, will be in October. The features in just sort of as a cutoff, the Minivan features, these landing page features, those will be released before the election. Supporter generated events. I know there is some discussion right now about whether that will be finished before our code freeze in October. So that might go out before the election. Otherwise, no, unless there's something I've completely missed, I don't think there's any sort of big feature that will be rolling out between now and the election. But actual code freeze happens in October. And both the story collection and the Minivan UI update will definitely be happening after the election.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for either Jen or Julia? We have enough time that if you have other questions about Van, we can probably take those, right?
Yeah, we'd be happy to. Or we can take them, and if we don't have the answers, we can get them for you.
All right, folks, ask away.
Hi, this is Michelle in Montana. I was curious, we seem to be noticing more issue with using minivan in areas where there's limited or no cell reception and internet service. Just wondering if there's um, anything specific we can do to address that, or changes that you might have made that would would impact that happening.
Sure. I'm curious to know a little bit, to dig in a little bit deeper in like kind of like defining those issues. If you want to, maybe we can like send in a support ticket to hash those out. I will say that fundamentally minivan is designed to work offline. So you should be able to download a list, go into airplane mode, canvas all of your folks, turn your, go back and reconnect to Wi-Fi, and then sync your list. If that hasn't been your experience, then there are a couple other things that could be happening that I'd want to look into. So maybe if you want to send in a ticket and flag it for me and my team, we can kind of dig into what's been happening. Because those minivan really should work offline. You shouldn't need to have an active data connection unless you're using one of our features like Minivan Manager, which I don't think you would in rural Montana. It might not be, if you're having trouble with data connections, that might not be the right tool for you guys. So yeah, if you're experiencing issues, if you can send in a ticket so we can kind of hash them out. I will say we did release an Android update this morning for folks on Android Pie that were having issues. So I would kind of encourage you to have all your canvassers update their app.
Can I ask a really quick question, Jen? When folks like Michelle or others are reporting minivan issues, what are the most important things that they make sure to include? Obviously, every situation is going to be a little bit different, but what are the things you definitely always need?
Sure. So in order to solve any really minivan ticket, there are, couple of really important pieces of information. The first is information about the device. So what kind of device is your canvasser using, and what operating system are they on? So, for example, I have an iPhone SE that is running, 11 point whatever. The second piece of information we need is what version of minivan they are running. A lot of times, especially right about now, folks are kind of dusting off old devices that are 2-3 years out of date, which is why they're not seeing some of the features they're expecting to see. And the last information we need is about the canvasser and the list number. So for example, Jen Willis was canvassing list number 1234 on August 14th. We have a lot of really extensive logging that we can look into, but we kind of need those pieces of information to track down what's going on.
Great, thanks, Jen. Michelle, does that feel like enough information for you to help us better troubleshoot the issue?
Yeah, and I know that's sort of a vague, like, to say that minivan seems to be crashing more offline, and having more specifics is helpful, and can try to make sure that I get more of that specific information from the canvassers and field directors who are reporting that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
please, that would be helpful, because we want it to be able to work offline. So hearing reports that it's not, we want to be able to fix that.
All right. Other questions for folks? Angela, anything that that you wanted to ask or discuss today?
Not that I can think of, but I'd love, since I get to talk to y'all every week, see if anyone else has any questions.
Hello, yes, I have a question.
Great.
My name is Latanya Wallace. I'm with the Virginia Civic Engagement Table. I had one of the partner organizations, some of her organizers were having difficulty getting their minivan commits to sync and show inside a van after their canvas. I submitted a support ticket and I provided the list numbers, device info, the OS version for the Android, and the minivan app version, but I haven't received an update on what was causing the issue on the minivan actually submitting those commits and syncing it with van so the partner could see their Canvas results.
I do not.
Jen, I found the ticket. Let me follow up on that for you, Latoya.
Thanks.
Latanya,
Okay,
sorry. Thank you.
Sorry, it's hard for me. I can't. I'm sharing my screen, so I can't. So thank you, Julia. But yeah, Julia's going to follow up on that one. I will tell you, if you can please have them update their app. That sounds like the issue that folks were having with the recent Android update that went out last week. So I think the first step is probably to have the folks actually update their app to the version of Minivan we released this morning.
Okay, I'll be sure to share that. Thank you.
Great.
Hey there, it's Michelle. So not really a question, but just more of a comment. I just wanted to say thank you for the minivan commit page update.
Oh, great. I hope they're working out. I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Michelle, are you just noticing an improvement in like page processing time or
Yeah,
overall
processing
works
and
better?
processing is what I'm hearing from partners.
Nice.
Fantastic. Yeah, we made some improvements to hopefully speed it up for folks. And by our logging, it has been faster. So that's good to hear.
Okay, great. Anyone else? We're happy to, I'm sure everybody would be happy to get 25 minutes back of their day, but, you know, happy to answer any other questions.
This is Michelle again. If no one has any other questions, I do have some questions about the voter reg tool. I don't know if you'd be able to answer some of those.
We can try.
All right. Well, I was just curious to know a little bit more about address types that cause records to not get pushed from the voter reg tool to My Voters. So if you have non-USPS standard addresses or addresses without house numbers and things like that, if there's any way to get those registrations pushed over.
Julia, do you know offhand?
I don't. And Michelle, I think, had you sent in a ticket on this as well? I'm trying to pull that up. Let me see. Is this in regards to ticket 197598? I don't know if you know.
Sort of related to that, and also just more generally, generally talking about some of the addresses.
Right. So it looks like Tyler's answer was more about what's required for matching, which it doesn't sound like exactly is what you're looking for. So I'm sorry, do you mind saying again what it is that you're looking for help with?
Yeah, wondering what causes an address to have a record be marked not enough information in the voter registration tool and not move over to my voters. So for example, if you have addresses without a house number, but an address description or just some other type of address that doesn't have that standard formatting, if there's ways to get those records.
Got it. Do you have any example van IDs or records that we could take a look at?
Yeah.
Do you mind sending those, Angela? Can I ask Michelle to send those to you just so we don't have to put this into a ticket quite yet, and then you can send them to me? Does that work?
Michelle, send them to me.
Cool. Thank you. Michelle, anything else about the voter registration that Katie and I can not give you an answer on, but try to?
Yeah. I think, I mean, it might be helpful maybe to make this not just a question that I have, but to see more generally sort of like what causes a record to be marked as not enough information.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can definitely I will ask that. Oftentimes the data team just likes to have the context of where is this happening, because it helps them to take a look. But I will ask both broadly and specifically for sure.
Thanks.
Okay. Great. Well, if there's nothing else, we will let everyone get back to their day. Michelle, I will look for that email from Angela from you and then be in touch on your question. And then also if you could send in a ticket on your minivan issue. And then for the Virginia item, the client services person said that they will be in touch with you today on it. Cool.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Julia and Jen. We really appreciate it. For everyone else, for the data staff, please get on Slack right now. We're going to try out Google Meet for a few minutes to just see how it works. It's something new we just enabled.
Awesome. Right, we'll hop off. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.